So today we're going to talk about PWIs, predominantly white institutions, which is a term that's basically used to know if a university or college is mostly made up of white people compared to Black, Latino, Asian, Native, Islanders, etc. I wanted to do this video because I remember when I was doing my research for colleges, diversity was like a really important factor to me until like all the way to the last minute. I just needed a school that I can afford to go to, so I chose to just go to USF, not doing my research enough on that school to know if it was a PWI or not. I did not know that it was technically a PWI. Before I go into that, I just want to basically the reason why I want to do this video is because I want you to understand that a PWI, a school being that doesn't have to be the deciding factor of whether or not you do or don't go to that school. In my case, I didn't know what USF was a PWI before I started, but once I was there, I would have never known unless somebody told me after that it was a PWI. USF, in my experience, it was a very, you could tell it was a PWI in the classrooms, but overall on campus you wouldn't be able to tell. USF is a school where the culture is everybody was participating in the events that was happening on the campuses, events, rallies, dances, all of that stuff. Everybody was participating in them. I remember especially when they had their club fair. If your only impression of USF was walking into the club fair, you would forget what a PWI even means, because it was literally, they have clubs for people of not for people, but educating people on Asian culture, Black culture, Latino culture. Those are the main three I can think of, but then there's also a diversity in many other ways too. What I also appreciated about USF is that these clubs, for example, I think they had 3 Haitian clubs, which I loved. They had a club for Haitian women, a club for Haitian men, and a club for just Haitian culture in general. And here's the thing, you didn't have to be, for the one that's in general, because the other two was a sorority, fraternity type of thing. But the one that's for Haitian culture in general was the biggest one. And you didn't have to be Haitian to join it. You can be white, Black, they don't care. Because the point of these colleges, just in general, not just USF, the point of these colleges having clubs that's centered around Latino culture, Black culture, Haitian culture, whatever, Asian culture, it's to not only celebrate it for those who are from those cultures, but also to educate it to other people and to share their culture with other people, which was the case with all of the clubs actually. For example, me being from Miami, I could have swore up and down that I was one of the most diverse, educated people ever. But then I get to USF and I realized that there's more to the world than just North, South, and Central America and the Caribbean. There's more to the world than just the Western Hemisphere, which I thought was oh, I'm already the most diversely educated person ever. No, there's a whole entire another part of the world, Asia, Europe, Africa, where you were able to discover these cultures at USF because they had Asian clubs, they had African clubs. I don't know if they had European clubs, but I know they had Asian and African clubs, especially Middle Eastern clubs. That was a culture that I was never familiar with before. Actually, just Asia in general. I got to learn more about Indian culture. I got to learn more about Israel and Pakistan. What else? Those were the main 3. India, Pakistan, and Israel. I think those are the main 3 cultures of those countries where I was able to learn about it. And you would never, if you cut out this introduction part of the video, you wouldn't even know I was talking about a PWI. I'm talking about a PWI where I found all of these cultures, where I was educated in all of these cultures. So I have my notes here for the points I wanted to make, but I think I made them ready. If you're like me, where you're doing your research for college like you haven't gone to one yet, or maybe you're going to one but you're worried, it's not, a PWI doesn't equal only white culture exists on the campus, because USF technically a PWI, but I learned so much about many other cultures there. I opened my world from attending a PWI like USF. Now let's talk back to the club fair, because I think this is a perfect example if you were to just walk into one at USF especially. My first point that I want to make is diversity is not just race. Just because you share the same race with someone doesn't mean that you share the same interests. Think about it. Like, think about people in your community where technically like you're grouped in with them. It doesn't have to be just by race, but by gender, by how you call it, by ethnicity, right? Just because you guys share that same identity, it doesn't necessarily mean that you like each other, right? You know, like it's like you don't want to like put yourself in the box, basically, you know what I mean? Diversity isn't just race. And what I also liked about USF is it wasn't just diverse in culture and race and ethnicity, even though it is a technically PWI. Like, the clubs that they had there, it catered to people of all different types of interests. There was, of course, sports, like there's the usual sports and culture and stuff like that, but they also had, which was like, wow, they had a Harry Potter themed club. I think it was Quidditch, like from the actual like lore, or however you call it, from that Harry Potter world. Like Harry Potter, they had a Harry Potter themed club, and it was people of different races in that club. Like, it's not just like a white people thing. And you know, if you're like into like white people things, then it also might like, you know, be in your interest to even like, you know, consider a PWI. Like, get over the fact that it's a PWI, and people are going to have different interests than you. So, you know, just because you share the same race and ethnicity doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily like those people. Okay, I want to talk about an experience I had though at USF. I've never had this experience before, and I don't want to like kind of address like some of the like, actual like legit worries you might have about attending a PWI. There are times, like I said, in the classrooms you'll notice a PWI, but on campus you won't. On campus there's just a lot of things going on that cater to so many different interests, so it's gonna be more diverse. But when you're sitting in like in classrooms, especially in classrooms where it's like not too many people of color doing these like majors, you know, like for example, I remember I did a boot camp on USF, and well, at USF, but it was like mostly focused on, how you call it, cybersecurity. Yeah, it was a cybersecurity boot camp. I'm pretty sure I could count like 2 other people of color in a sea full of white people, you know. But that's a different story. Like, nothing like happened there, but it's just like there's certain spaces where, yeah, there'll be a lot of white people, and there's other spaces where no, there won't. I had this experience one time in speech class. What was it, speech class? You know, when you're talking. I think it's called speech fundamentals. Anyways, I had this experience where I came into the class late, and I sat down all the way in the back, and I noticed the class was kind of like split into 2 because they were doing a debate, but it was like a team. Half the class on one team, half the class on the other team. So I came in late. I walked into the back corner and sat down, and then I was like kind of like trying to catch up on what they were like talking about, but like, so I was like listening like attentively to what was going on. They were doing rounds, and by the last round, that's when I was one of the 3 for our team to go up for the last round of debating. And so this one white boy in front of me, he like basically like kind of like nominated me to be on the last round, because not everybody had to participate, but it was good if you did. And so not everybody had went, but for the last round he said, oh hey, like you should go. And so I said yeah, and then he was like, yeah, you should go because you're sassy. What? he called me sassy, which was basically like a nice way of saying ghetto. And the reason why I interpreted it as like ghetto-ish is because even though he said sassy, I want to bring this back to the point where I have experienced sometimes feeling like I'm the most ethnic person in the room, which is like a really strange experience for me, because back where I'm from, I'm considered the whitest person in the room. And so to be now at a PWI in a classroom, and for me to be considered sassy, you know, like it's just sometimes when you are in a space, and it's not just like at universities, but when you're I got 5,000 steps in. When you're at a, and not just in universities, but when you're in any space that's mostly white people, you're going to feel like you stick out a little bit. And this does happen too in the classrooms, but it's not necessarily in a bad way. Like nothing bad is going to happen to you, nothing like that. It's just you do feel yourself sticking out more, right? You look different from everybody else. So in this case, he called me sassy, and I guess it's because like some of the mannerisms that I carry back with me from home, it like back at home I'm like a very tame, in comparison to everybody else. Like I'm considered like very tame, very like quiet, like not really out there. But then now that I'm plucked out of where I'm from and put in this space of like surrounded by especially like mostly like all American white people, I look like the most foreign girl in the room, when like where I'm from, I'm just like, you know, like a nobody, like a regular. But then over there, I'm like considered like this, wow, like rambunctious, in your face type of person. When that's like, you get what I mean? There's a difference, but it's all relative. It's not like that means that there's anything wrong or weird about me. It just means that relatively compared to what they're used to, I stand out. But there's nothing wrong with standing out. Sometimes you just do stand out normally. So that was like an experience that like really stood out to me, because it made me realize how, like, compared to like what some people are used to, I am more of something to them, you know? So, or even like on YouTube, for example, like me, like in the space community that I am in on here in YouTube, I do feel more self-conscious about the type of person that I am, because I know the other people in my space, they're more, well, yeah, like, you know, talking about college and stuff, like you mostly see like predominantly white people talking about it. And so I do feel like I stick out a little bit when I'm like making my videos and posting them, because it's like I don't really see anybody else like me doing it. And so I don't know if myself will be well received, right? But still, like I still, like, you know, you still got a job to do. Like me, I still want to just keep putting videos out there. And then as a student, you're gonna just still want to be doing your work, trying to get your degree. So, you know, don't let like sticking out, being at a PWI stop you, you know? Yeah. And also, this is my last point from the notes that I wrote. Some people might be worried. I noticed that some people might be worried about how going to PWI, you might come out like acting more white or acting more bougie. Don't worry about that, because honestly, if you're just someone who can think for yourself, have your own opinions, and not necessarily like be like pulled in by what other people are doing, because like trends exist for a reason, right? But rather, if you can just like, you know, think for yourself, have your own thoughts, be your own person, then there's nothing wrong with like going to PWI and like, you know, or even like doing like white people things and dabbling in those things, or dabbling being in that type of environment, because, you know, it's like not like I don't know, the world is just diverse, you know? Like it's not like, okay, if I go to like stay in Asia for 3 months, I'm gonna come back like with completely like different customs than what I always do. Or if I go there for 4 years and then I come back, I'll still be like, I won't be the same person, but rather I'll just like have a more open mind and a more open world. And maybe, I mean, I know this is like a ridiculous example, I know it's not likely, but let's say maybe I do come back and I like start eating with chopsticks. I'm still, there's like, what am I trying to say? But you know what I mean? Like, what if I do come back eating with chopsticks? So what, you know? I think it's more convenient to eat food with chopsticks, but it's like, but there's still like other like customs from the West that I'm still doing for myself, because I just can pick and this isn't making sense, but I can pick and choose what I want to do. So same thing when you're at a PWI. When you're at a PWI, yeah, you might start code switching without even realizing it. You might start doing things that to your people back home might be considered bougie, but like who cares, you know? Like, I say that a lot on this channel, but okay, probably not who cares, but rather like, you know for yourself like how, but especially if you do go to a PWI and you're not a white person, like, you'll see how open your world becomes because you allow yourself to be in that environment and see for your eyes, rather than listening to what you hear on social media or what you hear like dramatized on the news. Like, you know, like there's like people are just like so unique. Like, you just have to experience for yourself what that's like. And so I don't think like there's gonna be anything wrong with going to a PWI if you want to, or at least in my experience, going to USF, I had a great time. So I'm going to end the video here, and let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know if you're considering going to a PWI, or if you have, tell me about your experience. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.